2, 1. Round 1. Capture the objective.
Hey guys, it's Percolating, and today we are back with another Real Talk. Now, it's been quite a minute since I've done one of these, so shouts out, good times, feels good, all that good shit. I'm really happy to be back because these are probably some of my favorite things to do because it's literally just questions that you guys have for me, and I want to just do a quick re-explanation for those who haven't been in the Real Talks before. I just want to let you guys know exactly what they are. So Real Talks are the easiest way to ask me a question and get a video answer response. So the best way is, hey Dalen, what do you think of blank? And that is how I give my response, and my answer more or less is, what do I think of blah blah blah, and advice and such that might go along with it. So in this case, we are going to be doing a Real Talk on finding passion. Now, this is one that was given, an idea that was given to me by my roommate, actually. We were having a conversation, and it went about how did I find my passion for what I like. And I guess to start that off, it means I need to tell you guys, well, what the fuck is my passion? And honestly, I love the question because, I'm passionate about it. So, personally, my passion is entertaining. And that's very general, which is kind of bullshittery because I can kind of make it and twist it to whatever I need it to be in whatever moment. And that's why I think certain things are just kind of better for me. It's why I think I was decent at waiting tables. It's because it's partially entertaining and making sure that they have a good experience, and giving a good experience is something that I thoroughly enjoy. I think people smile when they maybe didn't have a good big smile when they walked in. I've helped out, I've entertained them to some extent. I've changed their emotion from one way to another. I love doing it with actual stories, with creative, creating jokes, making new ways for them to, they didn't think about something before, so now they're like, oh, they're thinking about, wow, that was really cool, that was insightful. That is my favorite thing to do, to be an entertaining, sometimes insightful person. And luckily for me, it was something that I found growing up. Now, finding that passion wasn't something that just came to me. It took a lot of searching, and honestly a lot of egging, from in a negative way, but in a negative way that ended up turning positive. And it wasn't in it wasn't for bad, but when I was younger, my parents would often tell me that I quit too many things. Why don't you do this? Why don't you ever finish what you start? Why don't you ever do this? Why don't you ever get to the end? And it was because every time the answer would be, I don't like it anymore. Which was a very common strand of thought for me when I was younger. Is I would say, I don't like it anymore. I got really close to becoming a black belt in Taekwondo, and then I stopped because I didn't like it anymore. I used to play a lot of soccer, and then I stopped because I didn't like it anymore. I used to do a whole lot of things, and every time I would stop, and my parents would ask why I would want to stop, and the answer would always be that I didn't like it anymore. And it annoyed the hell out of them. It really did. They didn't like it because it would be me putting a lot of passion into something. Like, say at one point I was into playing music, and I played a guitar. I was decent at it. I could have gotten better, but after a while I stopped practicing as much, and then I asked to be pulled from it, and they asked why, and I simply answered, I didn't like it anymore. And it bugged them, but for me, it was my way of trying things. And sometimes it was, the thing that was kind of bullshit is that sometimes it'd be expensive. Getting a bass guitar, an electric bass guitar at that, plus an amplifier and all that, was expensive. Luckily, they were able to sell it and get some of their money back, and I'm happy that I was not super thoughtless in that respect. I felt really bad, but I was like, I went on with it for a little bit longer, thinking maybe I'll get that passion back from when I first started, but I didn't. And the reason was, it just wasn't my cup of tea in that way. It was cool. I wish I still knew how to play it, but play the guitar, but I'm not passionate about it. It'd just be one of those things I wish I knew how to do. And there's a weird difference in that we'll come back around to, I feel like, at some point. So hopefully, if I don't ramble too far, I'll get back to that. But the passion wasn't there. And that's weird because I said in the beginning, I like entertaining no matter how I do it. But that wasn't something that I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy playing an electric bass guitar. So I stopped doing it. There are very few constants for me. And very few of them that were so noticeable that I was able to pull them together. Until I finally did when I was older and started really being in my own head and thinking about it. But there were a lot of constants. For me, I could tell stories from a very young age. I had crazy dreams that I would then turn into small stories. I wrote actual books that obviously didn't go anywhere, and they weren't legible, and they weren't good in the respect of, like, hey, they would have made fantastic books if they had been published. But, like, I wrote a lot. I used to write a lot. I'd write down these ideas and these stories because people didn't like to listen to me. I talk a lot. Let's be fucking honest. I talk a hell of a lot. And people didn't want to listen to the ridiculous shit I was saying for so long. So I would just write it down. And I'd formulate these long-ass, ridiculous, convoluted stories. That did have they did have a beginning, middle, and end. Like, one of my favorite things to do when I was super young was to drive my little toy cars around with my action figures, and my action figures would get in the cars, and they'd be driving from scene to scene, doing things to things. There was an entire fucking story of a movie that played out between my action figures when they were going from one person to the next, and who betrayed who to fight the ninja assassins that were taking over the government. This was a whole, I'm shit you not, that was an actual thing. But it was very much a thing that I created because I just enjoyed making these stories. And sometimes my uncles would ask me what I had been creating, what stories I had for them, because I always had some. And I would, whenever they said, hey, we want to hear them, I would sit around and I would tell these very long stories. And if those times that they sat down, listened to me, a lot of times they were probably thinking, this kid's fucking crazy. This kid's actually fucking insane. But he's adorable, so fuck it. And he's super happy. And they liked listening to me in that respect. And I appreciated it. And anytime they did, I would give them a show. And I would make sure that they understood, like, the reasonings behind and the blah. And I had backstory and lore and reasons and blah. And I would pour it out to them. And they would listen and they'd be like, yep, okay. I'm glad that you had that. And they would move on. For them, it was just, you know, Dalen telling these wild stories. It's fun. But to me, it was telling stories that entertained. And they entertained. They smiled the whole time. They weren't fake smiles. They were like, oh, yeah, you know, good stuff. Like, this kid's got some, it's crazy. They were probably smiling at my idiocracy, but still the same. They smiled. And that's what I cared about. And that was from a very young age. But as I grew older, I stopped writing as much just because I became self-conscious about my own handwriting. So I didn't like writing as much. And I didn't have a computer for the longest. But when I did finally get a computer, I started to play with Windows Movie Maker. And when I played with Windows Movie Maker, it was really fun for me. I would put images and GIFs, because I just recently found out GIFs were a thing, so I started putting GIFs to fucking music with the beat. I still have these videos somewhere, but I'm not gonna pull them up because the obvious reason, they're super cringy. But like, I used to do that, and that was my thing I'd do for fun. I made one for my mom for Mother's Day at some point, like very customized to her and stuff like that. And I chose the music and made her, and like, it was super nice. And she smiled and she was super excited. She didn't know how to do it, and she was super excited that I made her something. I was like, I did it. My sister made her something physically. I couldn't do that. I made something for her on the computer. So then I realized, all right, I won't. It was around then that I could start to realize I liked computers. But I didn't realize that I liked computers until I got older and continued doing more and started to learn things like Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Premiere from a camp that I went to. When I learned that, I started to play with it more. I started to do more with it. It was awesome. But I wouldn't have said that was my passion if you had asked me. I would have been like, I do it. I know how. I didn't realize it, so I started doing. But I continued to do it, and I continued to tell stories in whichever ways I could. I realized I enjoyed entertaining. I didn't realize it yet, but when I started to get older, I started to play a lot more games. Because I had always been playing games. I've been playing games since I was super little, and when I started playing, like I loved it. It was so immersive, and it would take my attention for hours and hours and hours on end. Sometimes there would be ridiculous stories that I could love to follow, and I like playing Super Smash Brothers. This subspace was like the best thing because it was like an imagination given to me, and it was awesome. Like that's the type of thing that I loved. Like I was like, it was insane. There was tons of stories that I loved from when I played games. So like, that was my thing. I loved it. I loved playing games, so I played them, and to my parents' dismay, I played them a lot. But if you had asked me if I wanted to create a game, I would never be like, yes. I don't want to create a game. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do any of that. It's not. I mean, be cool, but I'd love to be a part of it, but I don't want to do it. But then when I got into a dark time in high school, which don't need to get into why it was a dark time, but it was just a lot of not being in my own happiness. Like I wasn't happy until I got to the later years of my high school and started to accept a lot more about myself. But the first thing was realizing that I didn't know what I wanted to do. For the longest, I was just like, I'm just not gonna go to school. I don't know, I'll move somewhere, be a fucking bum. I don't give a shit. And then I got a job when I got a job when I turned 16. As soon as I turned 16, I got a job, and I was like, you know, working is nice. I like working. It's my thing to do, is to work for what I like. Work for money. It's nice. It's rewarding, and I enjoy it. So that's where I got a work ethic from. I'm like, okay, so I like working when it's paid back. And after all those things kind of happened, there was a bit of a lull in what do I want to do with myself. I was like, I don't want to do shit. Like, I don't want anything. But I realized that wasn't true, because there was something that left me unfulfilled. And in that unfulfillment, I sat by myself a lot and just kind of thought to myself, what the fuck do I want? What do I want? And it took a lot of me just sitting by myself, playing games that would let me zone, like that would let me just zone out. Like writing, like I didn't write, I just kind of, like I said, gaming was my big thing to do when I was like, I don't have anything else. So it would keep me occupied and let my mind just kind of think without having to think. And while doing that, I started doing YouTube, because I was like, I like watching streamers, and I think that's what I think that that'd be fun. So I started getting the equipment, and then in doing so, I started to realize, I'm like, I didn't start streaming. I started doing YouTube. And in doing YouTube, I was like, this is what I like. I'm enjoying this. Why am I enjoying this? And it took a lot of introspective on, like, I'm doing it, but why? Why do I continue to do this? Why am I doing this thing? Why do I like this? And in doing so, I started to think to myself, I'm like, wait, ever since I was young, I liked telling stories. That was like the first thread that I pulled together. And then I realized, oh, you know what? I also liked creating things. I do mostly on the computer, but I like creating things. So that was the next rope that would pull together. And then I said, well, it's not that I don't like working. I like working, but I like working on things that let me do what I'd like. And then would also still pay me back. It will still give me that fulfillment, which then was in the third rope. And then like after a while, I realized entertaining was the core of it all. Making people smile, making people happy, and you know, like helping everybody out is what I enjoy the most. So after I tied it all together, I got to where I currently started to stand. I was like, I want to entertain for a living. I want to do something that will allow me to make people happy doing what I do. Being crazy, being kind of insane, but in a fun way. Being a little over the top, being a little extra, that everyone is like, you know, this is fun. This is good. I like this guy. Like, I don't want fame by any means. I don't care about being famous, although it is kind of like, it seems like it would go hand in hand. I don't care about being famous. I care about entertaining people. I don't care if I'm in the back seat of it, in the front seat of it, but that is my passion, is to entertain. And it took a long time of sitting and just thinking, what are the things that bring me joy? Why do they bring me joy? And how do I tie them together with what I like? It took a lot, but I eventually ended up finding it. And for me, it was creating stories, or playing and creating stories, or being in stories and commentating in some cases, and entertaining others. The being an entertainment factor is what is my thing. It was my passion that I didn't know I had. And the more I looked at certain things, like, there were certain times where I'd do something and people gave me credit, and I'm like, you know, like, honestly, I think that's like that was that moment where that's another moment where I should have realized, like, I liked this. But that's what it took for me. It took, technically speaking, years. But there's never a bad time to turn around and figure out what you need to do to find your passion. Like, to find your own passion takes a bit of time. If you try to find it tomorrow, you're probably not going to. It takes a lot of sitting to find, like, looking back, and, like, pulling together small threads. Luckily, I'm a very introspective person, so it wasn't the hardest thing for me. It was still difficult, but, like, when I finally did get it, it was like, oh, that makes all the sense, and all the pieces, like, fit. But it also means that you can, like, to find it just takes that time of sitting to yourself, saying, this is what I do. Trying a lot of things helps a lot, because you see what does and does not make you happy, and doesn't make you, like, it makes it enjoyable for you. For me, I enjoyed playing soccer. I enjoyed doing taekwondo. I enjoyed doing bass guitar. But I didn't love it. It wasn't a passion. I enjoyed it. But it was like a side thing that I didn't really care too much about. I didn't want to put in all the time and effort, but I did enjoy it for the time that I did it. And it was a slight difference from enjoying it to loving it. I loved telling stories, and I did it for a long time. In my free time, that's what I did. I loved making stuff on the computer. When I had free time, I made stuff because it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and I loved it. But I did taekwondo because at the time I enjoyed it. It was fun, but I didn't love it. There's that slight difference of I loved it versus I didn't love it, but it was fun. And that's really what I feel like makes a passion, is that ability to come back and do it every day. Is like, I play Overwatch with passion because I love Overwatch. It's also super entertaining, and I can do a lot with it. There's a lot of microscience. It itches a different part of the brain than the creativity of creating things like this does. It itches a different part of the brain, the more analytical part of my brain, where I can sit down and break down piece by piece what I could do better, and improve self-improvement, which I love doing also, but that's a whole different thing. That's a behind the scenes of making stuff for you guys, is the constant self-improvement. So it's there as well. There are different passions. I have many, like, I'd say that there's a pretty good way of telling, like, what's a passion versus something that you love and something that you like. Like, for me, a passion is something that I'm like, I could do all the time. I could do it all the time. Even in the worst feelings, I could usually still kind of make something. I might trudge along a little bit, but for the most part, I can still make it. Something that I like doing, I enjoy doing it on my time. I enjoy self-improvement. I love doing self-improvement. It's fun. Well, it's not fun. It's like, self-improvement is what makes me feel like I'm doing more things and getting better. So I constantly try to self-improve. I love doing self-improvement. But I also enjoy like taking walks around the neighborhood. Something I could do every so often, but I don't have to. If I didn't take a walk around the neighborhood, I wouldn't cry. But if someone was telling me how I couldn't make videos, or I couldn't stream, or I couldn't game, I'd be a little bit upset, especially after like a couple months. I start to get fidgety. It's my thing to do. So for me, there are certain things that I find a little bit more in a passion or in a love versus something that I enjoy. And to find that passion took a lot of time of self-reflection and sitting down and thinking through it. But it also just turned out to be the thing that I did to figure it out. I sat down and played games for a long time until I figured out exactly what I wanted, like exactly why I enjoyed doing it. So maybe that's the trick, is going in and kind of doing what you want to be doing the most until you find that little niche that it kind of touches. And then you're like, that's it. And it kind of brings everything else together, or at least it did for me. Obviously, this isn't a one-trick guide. It's just things that you can do that can help out. But that is my thoughts on, finding your passion. It's not a perfect guide, and it's not like a how-to, but it's how I got to my point of knowing what my passion was, and currently chasing that passion. So hopefully it helps somebody else out, and maybe one of you guys have some really good ideas that you can leave down in the comments or in my Discord, where we talk about stuff like this fairly constantly. So anytime you guys have questions for me, feel free to drop them in the suggestion hall or down in the comments of any video. It'd be fantastic and appreciated. So with all of that, guys, I'd say it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. And that I'll see you guys in the next video. All right? Have a good one. Bye!